Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 14.3A. I've entitled this video, The People of East Asia. This video is going to cover pages 448 to 449. The people. Most people in East Asia live crowded together in river valleys, basins, and deltas, or on coastal plains. These lands and climates are favorable to agriculture and industry and are among the most densely populated places on Earth. In contrast, vast areas in the west and northwest are sparsely populated. Just take a look at this map right here. Notice what the dots symbolize. One dot represents 100,000 people. Look how dark the coast of China is. Of course, we'll talk about India later on in the year, but definitely look at how China is densely populated along the east coast there and these areas, and then how sparse it is in these areas. And notice Japan is extremely densely populated. Question number one, how has the population density of East Asia varied? Well, it just depends. If you're on the east part or along the river valleys, basins, deltas, and coastal plains, you are very crowded. If you live in the western, northwestern parts of China, it is sparsely populated. Throughout much of its history, China has had a large population. 2,000 years ago, the number of inhabitants had already reached an astonishing 59 million. Even today, only about 24 countries have this many people. And you can see a bar graph here showing the population of China over time. Question 2. What has China had throughout its long history? A large population. For many centuries, China's population growth was slowed by epidemics, famines, warfare, and other factors. After the 1300s, however, growth began to increase steadily. And in the middle of the 1900s, it became explosive. Because the uncontrolled growth was causing many problems, the government enacted a policy in 1979 that required families to have no more than one child. This one-child policy helped to slow China's growth. China's 2010 census showed a population of 1.37 billion people on the mainland and in Taiwan and Hong Kong. Far more densely populated in the east than in the west and northwest, China has an average population density of about 140 persons per square mile. In contrast, its northern neighbor Mongolia has a population density of less than 4 persons per square mile. And you can see that illustrated with this map here. Notice 94% of Chinese people live in this area and only 6% live in that area. If nothing says population density like that map, it's the best way to get that concept to get through to someone. Question number 3. What were 3 things that slowed China's population growth in its early history? Epidemics, famines, and warfare. Question 4. What happened to China's growth in the middle of the 1900s? It began to explode. Question 5. What was the one-child policy that China implemented in 1979? It was the law that said families could have no more than one child. They were trying to enact this policy to slow down their uncontrolled population growth. Question 6. Why did China implement a one-child policy? Well, they did that because they felt like the population growth was causing its own problems. When we read the book The Giver earlier this year, that book was inspired in part to this one-child policy, the concept that if you have too many people, people will suffer in other ways, like starvation and things like that. So China put the one-child policy into practice. Population growth in some other parts of East Asia slowed at the end of the 1900s. Japan's low birth rate means that the average age of its population is increasing. Nearly 1/4 of the population is age 65 or older. Since the mid-1990s, Japan has encouraged more births by providing programs such as childcare. Soon, the country could face a shortage of workers. A shortage might encourage leaders to allow more foreign workers into the country. Question number 7. What challenge is Japan facing with its population currently? That they're aging. Nearly 1/4 of the population is 65 or older, and you can see that by this population growth or population age chart here. Question number 8. How is Japan trying to encourage more births in its country? By providing programs such as childcare. Question 9. What step might Japan have to take to meet its need for workers? They might have to encourage more foreign workers to come to the country to work. Where people live. Throughout China's history, most of its people lived on the land as farmers. Economic reforms in the late 1970s, however, caused a surge of urbanization. Millions of peasants left their farms and moved to booming cities in eastern China. Nearly half of the country's people now live in cities. Shanghai has about 11 million people, making it the largest city in China. Just over 7 million people live in Beijing, the capital. Hong Kong, which China regained from Britain in 1997, has more than 5 million people. Dozens of other Chinese cities have populations greater than 1 million. Of course, this book was put out a couple years ago, but definitely you can see the size of China's cities are vast. Question number 10, what does the word urbanization mean? That means when the population shifts from rural areas, farming, to urban areas, cities. Question number 11, what is the most populated city in China? That is Shanghai. Question 12, what is the capital city of China? That is Beijing. In other East Asian countries, urbanization began earlier and is farther advanced than in China. In Japan, 2/3 of the people live in cities. The cities of Tokyo, Osaka, Nagawa, and Yokohama form a megapolis or supersized urban area along the coast. Greater Tokyo, Japan's capital and its largest city, and the largest megalopolis in the world, is home to about 32 million people. Question number 13. Where do 2/3 of Japanese people live? In cities. Question 14. What is a megalopolis? That is a supersized urban area, and it is basically a massive amount of people living in one spot. As South Korea industrialized, more people moved to cities. Now, 83% of South Koreans live in urban areas. The country's capital city, Seoul, has more than 10 million people. Across East Asia, the standard of living for people in cities is generally higher than that of people in rural areas. Question number 16. What caused more people to move to cities in South Korea? They were industrializing, and so that's where the jobs were, so that's why people moved there. Question 17. Where do a vast majority of South Koreans live? In the urban areas. Question 18. What is the capital of South Korea? That is Seoul. Question 19. What does the phrase standard of living mean? It is, as defined here, the material well-being of the average person in a given population. So how is their ability to have basic needs met, such as food, water, shelter, clothing, and these days, electricity, internet, things like that. And question 20. In general, how is the standard of living for people living in cities in East Asia? It's much higher than those living in rural areas of East Asia. Well, that is all I have for you today. Before we go, I have something for you. When urbanization gets rid of your favorite tree. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.